everyone, my name is Nicole. I'm a teacher here at Queen Street Yoga, and I have some exciting information to share. We're introducing a new course for the winter term, and it's called Basics and Beyond. So why we're offering this and what it's all about. This is a great course if you're a student who's taken any of our intro courses 1 and 2, or if you've been involved in taking some of our basics drop-in courses, this is an ideal one for you. And what we're going to be exploring is the why behind some of the cues you've most likely heard and practiced alongside with at the studio. So the course is going to be based on principles of alignment that come from the Anusara lineage of yoga. And so today in this video, I'm going to be specifically focused on 3 of these principles. So one is muscular engagement, and the second one is a concept called a loop within the body. So there's the kidney loop we're going to talk about today, and there's the pelvic loop that we're going to talk about today. And in addition to that, if you're interested in potentially bringing your practice home from the studio, we're going to help you work through that and develop a sequence in class that you can then take home and practice at home and just make that a little more accessible for you. So to begin, if you'd like to join me, you can hop on your mat, and we'll start with chair pose. So from Tadasana, I have my feet in a comfortable parallel position, supporting a width that helps me stabilize my pelvis. My toes are pointing straight ahead here, and I'm going to start by bringing my hips back over my heels, coming into a chair posture. So right now my muscles are pretty loosey-goosey, so this is where I want to call on muscular engagement to help me stabilize this pose. And I'm going to think about my feet being equally distributed as far as the weight goes. And then from here, I'm going to draw energy up from the floor, and I'm going to hug my feet towards each other. So you notice my feet aren't actually moving on the mat, but I'm creating a hugging energy. So my shins and my knees and my thighs are hugging together here. So instantly I feel more strength in this pose. I can sit my hips back, wiggle them back a little further. And then once I reach my hands out in front of my chest and at shoulder height, notice that this area right around my ribs wants to thrust forward. So I'm going to exaggerate that movement, thrusting forward. So the principle of the kidney loop here is it's like a bike, it's like a wheel, or it's like, it's like a wheel. We'll go with that analogy. And so we're going to take the wheel and we're going to spin it forward. And with that, I'm going to draw my ribs slightly inward. And now my ribs are kind of flush with my hip points here. What happens there is that my low back curve goes from being exaggerated, like you can see here, to being slightly less exaggerated. Okay. So now we've got the muscular engagement, we've got the kidney loop engaged, and now we're going to come to the pelvis. So with the pelvis loop, I might be lifting my tail up excessively. Again, what happens there is it emphasizes the curve to my low back. So from here, I'm going to take my pelvic loop, I'm going to engage my bum muscles, and I'm going to draw my tail down towards my heels. So now you can see I have a more neutral curve. It's still maintaining the natural curve of my low back, but it's not excessive. Okay, so we've engaged those 3 principles in chair pose. I'm going to come up and I'm going to take a breath. Pose number 2, same principles, but from one of our favorite poses at the studio, plank pose. So this is a weight-bearing pose on the hands and wrists. I'm going to show you a little bit of a prep for weight bearing on the hands after I get through these 3 poses. Okay, so within plank pose, I'm coming through a quadruped position, so hands and knees, walking my knees back slightly behind my hips. Plank can be done from the knees, or you can lift up, floating the knees off. I'm going to go between the 2 as I need. So once again in plank pose, if my muscles are kind of disengaged, you can see how I might start to sag down to the ground with my hips. Feels pretty yucky on the low back. So I'm going to begin by engaging my muscular energy. So hugging my midline with my arms. So my upper arms are moving closer together here. And I'm going to do the same thing with my legs. So calves, thighs, moving towards each other. So now I've got this hugging support. Lowering the knees for a moment here. Next step is the kidney loop. So once again, if I reverse the kidney loop and I just let it all hang out, ribs wise, ribs are lowering down to the ground, hips are sagging, so my ribs are thrusting downward. So I'm going to engage the kidney loop by drawing my back body up towards the ceiling as if I have an inflatable raft underneath me giving me a little boost. And then just a little nestle in with the front of my ribs in towards my spine. Now with the pelvic loop, I might be inclined to lift my tail upwards like so. So to get the pelvic loop happening, same thing, engage the glutes. So I'm tucking the tail slightly down towards my heels. All three principles are now engaged. All right, taking a little break here. I'm now going to show you the three principles in downward facing dog. Little shimmy in between, lifting up from tabletop, coming into a downward facing dog. I'm going to automatically reverse my loops here. I'm going to thrust my ribs down towards the mat. I'm going to lift my tail high. Notice there's a lot of curve, a bit of a banana back happening. So first things first, muscular engagement. I'm going to hug my arms towards one another. I'm going to hug the feet and the legs. And then I'm going to draw my hands towards my feet, so I've got a much more stable base now. Now to correct the kidneys and the pelvis. So notice how my upper back, right around my shoulder blade area, it's going to float up towards the ceiling. Feels much better. Ribs are nestling in towards my body here. And then slight tuck of the tail, just a little engagement of my glutes. And right there, my low back curve is a little more neutralized there. Okay, those are our three poses with the three principles intact. Now I'm going to show you a little flow. And we're going to start with a bit of a wrist prep. So I'm going to incorporate the three poses that I just showed you. And I'm going to add a little bit of linking movement. So this is something you could try at home if you'd like. So because we're doing weight bearing on the hands and wrists, I'm going to show you an exercise called palm press-ups or palm push-ups. And you come into hands and knees here. You can always pad your knees with a blanket at home if your knees are sensitive. And we're going to place all 10 digits on the mat. And we want the base of our knuckles from index finger to pinky to remain heavy on your mat, okay? From here, my wrists right now are stacked under my shoulders. I'm going to offer a variation to that as well. We're going to float the thumbs off the mat, so they are not participating in this exercise. And with control, we're going to lift the heels of the hands up for a count of 2, and then lower down for a count of 2. You're not lowering your palms all the way down to your mat. You're still finding just a little bit, it's almost like you're kissing the mat with your palms. So you're not sinking right in. You might notice that the mound of your pinky finger wants to lift. If that's the case, just being aware of that. And we're going to take maybe 5 to 8 of these. If you find that this is too intense, you can always walk your hands back a little bit closer to your knees just to ease off some of the load on your hands and wrists. And then from here, we can just come off the wrists, bring the wrists around for a little circular motion. Maybe walk the hands, transferring weight, pointing the fingers in different directions than what you're used to. So the fingers are not pointing straight ahead and walking the fingers around. Maybe even playing with coming onto the backs of your hands, possibly one at a time. maybe both at the same time, and just experimenting with that. Now that our wrists feel a little warmer, we're going to start the sequence from the top. You can practice along with me, or you can keep this in your back pocket for another time. So from mountain pose, we're going to take one breath here, following an inhale. You can reach the fingers high. As you exhale, sinking back into chair pose. Right away, drawing the energy up from the ground, muscular engagement. Thighs are magnetically attracted to each other here. We're gonna nestle in the ribs. We're gonna draw the glutes down to our heels here. Let's take a couple breaths in chair pose. From chair pose, we'll take a forward fold. Fingertips can come down to blocks or touch the earth depending on how much range of motion you have through the backs of your thighs. Just swaying a few times here. Let your head fully drop here. Inhale to come to a halfway lift, Ardha Uttanasana, and then exhale to drink forward. We're going to step back to a plank. Once again, energize up from the arms, up from the ground, drawing the arms towards each other, inner ankles towards each other, shins and thighs, pelvic loop, kidney loop. One or two breaths here, maybe floating one foot at a time, just testing out how it feels when your plank becomes a little less stable. You might let your knees down at this time. From plank, bending the knees, reaching the pelvis high, coming into a downward facing dog. Take a couple breaths here. You're welcome to pedal out your feet. Anyone noticing my kidney loop here? It's missing, so I'm gonna draw the kidneys in, draw the ribs in rather. I'm not sure I have the control to draw my kidneys in. Reach the glutes down, that's subtle. And then float forward to a plank. And then from here, you can step or hop forward to a fold. Take as many breaths here as you like. And then we're gonna come back up through chair pose. Hugging the thighs towards each other here, drawing in the ribs, reaching the tail down, and then straightening the knees, giving it a shake. So, I hope to see you in Basics and Beyond, and look forward to seeing you around the studio.